This is Newstalk ZB News.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock. I'm Niva Reddy Manu. Both the outgoing and incoming governments are blaming the caretaker convention for a lack of comment on the situation in the Middle East. The convention applies when an outgoing administration is preparing to make way for an incoming one. International geopolitical analyst Geoffrey Miller told Kate Hawkesby a joint response between the two is difficult as the formation of the new government's not yet known.
Perhaps the better thing to do for the incoming government would be to do really its homework, to be fully briefed on the situation, to be ready to go.
Hawkesby.
It's 12 to 6. Well, as the war in Israel and Gaza continues to rage on, both New Zealand's current and incoming governments remain tight-lipped. National says Labor continues to take the lead on the response, but it's keeping them, closely involved, while Labor says because it's now a caretaker government, they're constrained on what they can do. So where's the middle ground? International geopolitical analyst Geoffrey Miller joins me now. Morning to you, Geoffrey.
Good morning, Kate.
What do you make of New Zealand's response so far?
Careful and cautious would be how I would characterise our response so far. Look, we've done the minimum. Chris Hipkins condemned that brutal attack by Hamas on Israel. He called for restraint on the part of Israel in its response. We've made a $5 million humanitarian aid contribution that was announced early last week. Beyond that, though, our ministers have been reticent, and that is by design because of the caretaker convention. And we're waiting very much for the formation of a new government to make a fuller response.
What more could we be doing? I mean, is being a caretaker government a good enough excuse to kind of, sit on our hands? How could it be different?
Look, caretaker governments are always awkward. It's not ideal, and I think given what's happening at the moment, this is the biggest shake-up in the Middle East probably for 50 years, certainly in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's the most devastating war since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. Given that situation, we'd probably like to see our government speaking out a bit more about it, but I guess it is the price of democracy. We've got to wait for all the special votes to be counted. Look, this conflict has been running for 8 decades. I think, sadly, it's still going to be raging in another couple of weeks, and there will be plenty of opportunity for the new government to speak up.
What about the likelihood of a joint response, from, both Hipkins and Luxon? What are the odds of that?
I think it's an interesting idea. I think the idea has some merit. I guess one flaw in that idea is that the new government is not just going to be the National Party. We're going to have ACT and probably New Zealand First involved, and it will only be fair and democratic, really, to consult with Winston Peters and David Seymour as well if you're going to consult with Christopher Luxon. But suddenly it becomes quite unwieldy if you're consulting with half the parliament and you end up with a compromise statement. I think perhaps the better thing to do for the incoming government would be to do really its homework, to be fully briefed on the situation, to be ready to go, and for our new foreign minister, whoever it is, whether it's Judith Collins, whether it's Winston Peters or someone else, for that minister to be ready to go to the Middle East and to be the eyes and ears for the next government and to have some kind of strategy because, we can't just say this is someone else's problem. This crisis really poisons the entire Middle East, in many ways the entire world, and it comes up with sadly, all too frequent regularity.
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, don't we just follow other countries' lead anyway at times like this?
I think there is an element of that, Kate, but I think we're not too small to make a difference. If you go back to 2015 and 2016, New Zealand was on the UN Security Council at the time, and Murray McCully, the foreign minister from National, did lead considerable efforts on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. So I think we do have a role to play in finding a solution, and in the end we need a long-term two-state political solution to this conflict. Otherwise it will just keep coming back to haunt us.
100%. And I know you mentioned earlier, in 2 weeks' time this is still going to be going. How far do you reckon, Geoffrey, the incursion needs to go before it reaches the line? I mean, otherwise there's literally no end to it at all, is there?
No, and look, we're just sitting here waiting for the Israeli ground invasion of Gaza, and this is what is, just so shocking. We're sitting here watching this from 16,000 kilometres away. We're waiting for our new government to come into power to make a more forceful response. These developments are just devastating, and as I said, it's the biggest shake-up in this conflict in 50 years. there's going to be plenty for the new government to do. And you wouldn't have thought that the Middle East would be top of the new government's foreign policy agenda, but it certainly will be, because it's the number one issue for the world right now. It's not going to be AUKUS, China, and all of these issues that we would have thought would have been top of mind for the new foreign minister. And so we definitely need a strategy, we need a plan, and we need the new government to do its homework right now to be ready to go whenever the new government is formed.
100%, and we need a decent foreign minister too. Thanks so much, Jeffrey. Jeffrey Miller, international geopolitical analyst. It's what makes that foreign minister position so crucial, doesn't it?